Alright, so we will start with law of cosine. Alright, so like I said, what you're given to, a formula contains all three sides and an angle. So the situation where you will use the law of cosine is SAS and SSS. Because if two sides and an angle is given to you, only one more side is missing, you can solve for that side. If all three sides are given to you, you can basically find the missing angle. But again, instead of talking, let's go ahead and see how we can use it. One thing you want to keep in mind, because from this point onwards, because if we know both law of sine and law of cosine, your brain will be thinking, should I be using the law of sine or should I be using the law of cosine in this situation? One thing you should keep in mind is, again, I made you guys write this down, you can never use sine inverse for an obtuse angle. So if you're trying, and when do you know something is obtuse? It's an obtuse angle if it is opposite the largest side. So if you're trying to find an angle that is opposite the largest side, go ahead and use cosine inverse if it's possible. Okay, so this is something that you want to keep in mind. You will not get an error if you try to do this. The calculator will not give you an error, so you have to be careful. It just the answer is just wrong. So you just have to keep in mind, just keep this in mind when you're using sine inverse to find an angle. If it is opposite the largest side, then you want to see if you can use a law of cosine. Okay, so just something for you to keep in mind. But let's start working on the problem. It says solve each triangle. So let's, as usual, let's go ahead and draw the triangle. So can we all do this without my help? I'll follow you, so I'll wait for a minute or two. Let's draw the triangle ABC with these two sides and an angle. Does the diagram look okay? So if you have written ABC in different positions, totally fine. Just follow the rule. But I always like to write it ABC in this form, but that's not the only way, obviously. Yes, Matt. Oh, okay. You're just stretching. Okay. So can I use the law of sine? There's only one angle, and that angle opposite does not have a side. Okay, and sometimes it's possible if they give me two angles, that means I can find a third angle, and if it has a side opposite I can, but I cannot even find a third angle. So law of sine is not even possible. Law of sine is not even possible. So I'm going to use the law of cosine. Okay, so let's analyze the law of cosine. So law of cosine is a good law to be able to find sides, because it tells you side square equals and so on and so forth. So we can try to find the third side. We can try to find the third side by using the law of cosine. So I will use the second formula, b square. So b square equals a square plus c square. So basically square of the other two sides minus 2 times, put the two other sides, multiplied by cosine of 10 degrees. Yes.
Do you have to memorize this formula?
No, it's given to you. It's given to you. The formula sheet is given to you. Okay, there's one error that I find students constantly making, so I will talk about that. So let's go ahead and do b square equals 4. I can add these two, right? 4 square, 5 plus 1, 4 plus 1, 5, minus 4 cosine of 10 degrees. I can do this? So far we are okay? Okay. My advice to you is, please do not subtract 5 minus 4 and tell me that this is 1 cosine 10. They are not like terms. They are not like terms. So you cannot multiply these, subtract this. Okay? So my next step is going to be, my next step is going to be b square. So basically you're going to put this in your calculator, that's all. You're basically going to put, because everything is here. So in your calculator you put 5 minus 4 times cosine 10, and that should give you b square. But what do you need? You need the square root of that. So whatever you get, you're going to write the square root of that. Okay, so now what's happening is, I do have, okay, everybody okay? Did everybody get that for B? Yeah, awesome. Okay. Now what's happening is, I do have an angle and a side opposite. I do have an angle and a side opposite. So let's just put that down. Sine of 10 degrees over 1.03. Okay, so now is where I want you to hit. Okay, now is when I want you to hit pause in your brain and think about, should I find angle A or should I find angle C? You should not find angle A using the law of sine, because angle A, angle A may be an obtuse angle because side A is the largest side. So once you find all the sides, if you want to highlight this and mark it as largest so that you don't make that mistake, so that is why you want to first solve for angle C. So angle C will be sine C over 1. So you want to do this, and you do not want to do sine A over 2. As it may be obtuse. Okay, here we go. I'm just writing it down so that, as we are doing this for the first time, so that you will remember not to do that. And do we all remember why I cannot do obtuse with sine inverse? Do we remember that? Because of the whole, remember, sine inverse exists in these two quadrants. Obtuse angles exist in quadrant 2. Quadrant 2 does not. Oh, it'll help if you guys can see it, right? Okay, so sine inverse exists in these two quadrants, whereas not in this quadrant. Obtuse angle exists in this quadrant, right? This is 90 degrees, this is 180 degrees. So that's the reason law of sine does not work well with obtuse angle. Okay, now go ahead and solve. Can we also solve for angle C? From angle C, find angle A, and we are done. Again, if anyone's not carrying a calculator, please make sure you're borrowing one from me. You should be practicing your calculator skills also, with all the parentheses and all of that, right? Everybody okay? So this is a perfect example where you have to you use law of sine and law of cosine to find sides and angle, and Pythagorean, not Pythagorean, sum of 180 degrees. Yeah, so you use all of it to find sides and angles. All right, going on to question number 2. Everybody is done with number 1. Anybody needs more time? Okay, awesome. Now we've been given, okay, just one quick thing. I should probably talk about this. Remember we said law of cosine uses SAS and SSS is a good one to use when there's SAS and SSS. This one was SAS because one side, what does SAS mean? 2 sides and an angle included. So what was given to me was side C and side A was given to me and an angle in between. So this one was SAS. That's why law of cosine was a good one to use. So SAS will never have a side and an angle opposite. So law of cosine works. What's this? I've been given 3 sides. Can you all see that? Small a, small b, small c are all 3 sides. So which means you're talking about SSS. When sometimes they give you SSS, they will also ask you, because you can, test if the triangle exists. This goes back to your geometry days. If 3 sides are given to you, do you know for a fact that it is a triangle? Do you guys remember that? What the rule is? Okay, let me first go ahead and draw the triangle. A is 4, B is 3, C is 6. Okay, only 3 sides. So SSS. So SSS works for law of cosine. Now do we know how to figure out if this triangle is a valid triangle? This is the rule. I don't know if you guys remember this. S1 plus S2. S1 and S2 are the 2 small sides, should always be greater than the largest side. You guys remember this? Sort of, maybe coming back to you. Take the 2 smaller sides, add them up. They should always be larger than the 2 large sides. So what are my 2 small sides? 3 and 4. Is it larger than 6? Yes. Yes, sort of, maybe from geometry. So take two small sides, they should always be larger than the largest side. S1 plus S2 greater than the large side. Okay, we know it's valid, so I can now start doing my work. Okay, so my goal is, I have been given 3 sides, my goal is to, so that's just something on the side. Okay, so don't distract that, don't get distracted with that from trying to find the missing sides and angles. Now we are going to try to find the missing angles. So I'm going to use my law of cosine. So my law of cosine is I can start with, it's a good idea to start with the largest angle. Can someone tell me why? I'm going to start with angle C. Because I'm going to use the law of cosine, I am eliminated using the law of sine for that particular angle. Because law of cosine works for acute angles and obtuse angle, whereas law of sine works only for acute angle. So if I take care of the largest angle, which may be obtuse, using the law of cosine, I have eliminated having to think about it later. Should I use the law of sine? Is it valid or not? So you find your angle C using the law of cosine. Okay, so I'm going to write this down. Find angle C using law of cosine. I could have chosen any angle. But why did I choose angle C? Because it may be obtuse. And law of cosine works for acute and obtuse. It's only law of sine that has a problem. Okay, can we all, okay, so I'm going to move up my sheet to the formula sheet, to the 3 formulas, so that we can figure out which of my 3 formulas will I use to find angle C. Okay, so here we go. Which of the 3 do you think I'll use angle C? 1, 2 or 3? Statement 3, perfect. I'll use statement 3 because that's the one that has cosine C. So remember, whenever you're trying to find an angle or that alphabet, you start with that side alphabet. So you start with C squared. So let's go and write this down. So C squared equals A squared plus B squared minus 2AB cosine C. Let's go ahead and substitute with what we know and leave out the missing variable. Okay, so this is where I had said that I sometimes find students making a mistake. This is where I find students making a mistake. They try to... Huh? Someone said something? No? Okay. Is everybody okay with this? So far? Right? Okay. Now, how do I separate cosine C? So, this is where I find a lot of students making this mistake. They subtract 25 from 24 and say this is 1C. 1 cosine C, sorry. 25 minus 24 is 1, so they say, okay, you cannot do that because they are not like terms. Remember, you cannot subtract and add unlike terms. So, you can move the 25 over to this side. 36 minus 25, which is what, 11? Equals negative 24 cosine C. Is everybody clear? Am I clear as to why we can't do that? They are not like terms. And now for you to separate the number from cosine C, divide by negative 24. So cosine C equals negative 11 over 24. Therefore, angle C equals cosine inverse of negative 11 over 24. And you put that in your calculator and tell me what you get. So when you're trying to find angles, use the law of cosine to find the largest angle. If you need to write that down somewhere, please do, but yeah. And the largest angle is always opposite the largest side. That's what I got for angles. Okay, yes. Is everybody okay with angle C? Now I need to find angle A and angle. Can I move on? Anyone still working on angle C? Okay. Now I need to find angle A and angle B. Okay. So my question is, now I have already found my. Remember, there can only be one obtuse angle in any triangle. I have already found my obtuse angle. Now I don't have to worry about, can I use law of sine? Can I use law of cosine? You don't have to think about anything. You use what works. Now you use what works. Okay. So can I use the law of sine now? Yes, because I do have an angle in the side opposite. So perfect. So I set it up. Sine 117.28 over 6. You can do either one of them, doesn't matter. They both have sides opposite. So do whichever, I don't care. I'll start with A. Like I said, you can do B. It doesn't matter. Sine A over 4. If you're doing B, you will say sine B over 3. And find angle A, and then whichever angle you don't find, you'll just subtract from 180. Yeah, of course. Can you write me down there? Yeah, thank you. So I'm just highlighting the steps just to so that you have some clarity what we did first. We first did law of cosine, got rid of the largest angle, then we did law of sine to find any of the other two angles, and then I did my sum of angles theorem to find the third angle.
Do you know how to start using, which angle to solve for first?
After the first step?
No,
Even the first step? Okay, so I chose to, so I know I had to do law of cosine. I don't have a choice in the sense of between law of sine and law of cosine, right? Because law of sine does not work. I don't have an angle and a side opposite, so it has to be law of cosine. Okay, then I thought that I should probably go with the largest angle, because if my next step is law of sine, I don't want to be getting stuck with trying to solve the largest angle with law of sine. Because remember, law of sine, you don't want to be doing an obtuse angle. So I went, because I knew I had to use law of cosine, I just went with the largest angle opposite the largest side. So that's why I had written here, find angle C using the law of cosine because it may be obtuse. So that's why I went for that. Does that make sense? And that's a great question, guys. It is hard to know which one to start with, because I'm stuck with law of cosine, I went with the largest angle because it is obtuse. Remember, law of cosine does not have any limitation. That's something that you want to keep telling yourself. Law of cosine does not have a limitation. Law of sine has a limitation of no obtuse angle. Yes?
I'm going to mark for angle A. I keep getting the wrong answer on my calculator.
So you did 4. You did the whole thing in one step, right?
Yeah.
So you did sine inverse?
Oh.
Okay, sorry, I didn't write that down because there was no space. Yeah. So it's guys, it's sine inverse of that. Yeah.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, Matt.
So the first step is number 2.
Uh-huh.
Can you just explain how you put them equal to each other? Why?
Oh, okay. In step 2, going from 1 to this.
No, it's why they're equal to each other.
Oh, this is the law of sine. Remember, law of sine is, this is the law of sine. I'm using the law of sine. Law of sine says, so if you go, okay, let's look at the law of sine. Law of sine is sine of an angle by the opposite side equals sine of another angle by the opposite side. Okay? So that's your law of sine. So if you go back and look, my goal is to solve for one of the other angles. So law of sine, you're always looking for an angle and a side opposite. So angle C is given to me, side C is given to me. So the first thing you do when you're writing the law of sine is to put that thing that's given to you, because you have both the sides, the top and the bottom. And on the other side, write the missing, yeah.
It can be any side.
And whatever is given, yeah, what exactly, that combination, exactly. So that's what law of sine is all about. Writing an angle and a side opposite, yeah. All good questions. Anyone else?